Hey, Steve Riley. Welcome to this episode of Great Practice, Great Life. Today is a solo episode. It's just you and me talking about your future. And I want to share with you a strategy that's really helped me in my life. It helped me grow my practice. It's helped me grow other areas of my life. And I like to call this concept my growth counsel. Now, as I walk you through it, I just want you to listen the first time. I've created a worksheet for you that will hopefully, at the end of this exercise, be something that will be helpful for you. You can download it, look at it, but I would not download it until you go through the entire episode, listen to what I'm saying, and then take it for a test drive. If it doesn't work for you, just throw it away. But if it does work for you, I'm going to encourage you to integrate it in your practice because it will help you grow. Now, it's done four things for me personally. One, it's allowed me to be far more creative. So when it comes to being a thinker, as a lawyer, I know how to solve legal problems. I can dive in. But as a business owner, sometimes I get jammed up. I can't think too creatively about certain problems. And so this particular technique, this strategy has allowed me to think more creatively. Second, it's helped me create a greater growth mindset. It's helped me shift my mindset where normally I would be stuck or frustrated with something and become more growth orientated, more of a growth mindset, quite frankly. Three, and this is my favorite, it's allowed me to solve certain types of problems quickly and cheaply. So it's allowed me to look at certain problems from a different way and quickly solve them and cheaply solve them in a way that I did not see the first time when I looked at the problem. And last but not least, it's allowed me to reduce some of the traffic, some of the head traffic, some of the noise in my head, some of the unnecessary chatter about certain things. And hopefully that'll become clear to you towards the end of the episode. Now, as we start to go through this episode, I'm going to encourage you to think about one problem you're having right now in your law firm. Now, if you're a team leader, it also applies to you. If you're an associate, no matter where you're at in life, I want you to think about what's that one problem right now that's kind of nagging and bugging you. Now, if you can, write it down. Write it down. Just go ahead and write it on a piece of paper. I don't care if it's a cocktail napkin, napkin at a coffee shop. I don't care. Write it wherever. Sticky note, doesn't matter. But write it down. But I really encourage you to write it down. At any time, anyone could jump in and just say stuff. Now, if you think about this, everybody has this. And with a little bit of research and preparation for this, a psychologist would call this an internal monologue. It is the voice narrating your life and reflecting on your decisions. Now, of course, it can be a helpful tool for managing obstacles. And depending on how you manage the voice, it can be very, very powerful. However, in my case, I had some really mean inner critics and some very, very negative self-talk. And it sometimes will be utilized by me to really motivate myself and try and, step up and be tougher and work harder. And I started realizing that some of these folks weren't particularly nice, and some of the folks weren't particularly asked to do this role in my life. So what I started to do, and this is what I'm going to recommend to you, is I started to go, well, and this is my lesson 4, who is currently on your, or in my case, my unplanned planning committee? I had a planning committee that was running around loose in my head, giving me all kinds of advice, and I needed to figure out how to organize them and figure out what their roles were currently. And so when they were confronted with a problem, they would say, "What would Steve do here? What would Steve do here?" Now, a couple things came out of that. First and foremost, um, I became very, very serious about what I taught from that point forward. Up to that point in time, I was having a great time. I would go and talk to people. I would go and teach. And sometimes people would apply things, sometimes they wouldn't. But at that moment, I realized that there was a group of women that got together and focused on how to grow their practices. And they used me as an imaginary prompt, like, what would Steve do here in this situation? Now, of course, I encourage them to aim higher. They're far better people to probably use as a prompt. But it really impacted me deeply to really step away and go, wow, I need to really take my game at a whole nother level. Then on the airplane home, it really hit me deeply that what they were doing is pretty clever. They were using me as a invisible advisor, an invisible counselor. They were using me as a prompt and thinking about the growth of their practices. Now, I started thinking more about that, saying, wow, why can't I do the same thing? It never occurred to me to actually put together a imaginary advisors that I could say, what would this person do? And I started thinking, wow, I could actually put together kind of 2 or 3 advisors and ask myself, what would these people do in the growth of their practice? Now, for me, lesson 2 became I could actually create my own board of advisors. Like, wow, I could create my own invisible virtual board of advisors. They could give me advice. I could run ideas by them. Then lesson 3 hit me. Lesson 3 hit me hard. Maybe it might have been the second bourbon on the airplane. I'm not really sure. But I realized I already had a planning committee. I already had a board of advisors that were kind of unplanned advisors that were running around loose in my head. They were offering random advice at any time. It kind of felt like a chaotic Zoom meeting with everybody unmuted, just yelling stuff and saying stuff. This a practice allowed me to stimulate conversations with brilliant minds and arrive at innovative ideas. So it was interesting when I read this and I said, wow, Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich use this technique, his technique of invisible counselors, as a way of creatively problem solving. And then I did a little bit more work and did a little bit more digging and discovered that in psychology, this particular technique is called reflective thinking. And it's used by psychologists to practice reflective thinking, or sometimes metacognition, which is thinking about your thinking, the ability to step back, observe the thoughts, and assess them critically. And reflective thinking helps you recognize patterns, challenge assumptions, and approach problems with a fresh perspective. So in my case, I tripped over the Growth Council as an essential way of structuring reflective thinking for me. Now, there are a couple other principles that are obvious. I'm not going to get too deep in them. One, obviously, is metacognition, because this is a technique to allow you to think about your thinking. 2, it allows a positive self-talk to redirect your inner dialogue into focused, productive brainstorming. And 3rd, it allows you to do cognitive reframing, changing how you perceive particular challenges by imagining advice from people that you respect.